Aquarimax here with the live stream. We're going to see if we can get, I just thought I'd get an early start. I saw some of you were in the chat already, and I'm trying to get a good focus on these little Gestroi here. I thought it would be cool to, wow, there's a lot of chat going on, which is great. So welcome, Aqua Garden Zen and Javi's Strange Pets. And who else is here? We've got a lot of good chat going on there. Between those two, Wendy Hickson, Dope Critters, Frank the Tank, nice. There's Sean Meister, Vicabulous, Mentis God, Just Jess, Pets Are My Life, Hunter, Reptilia Exotics, Slav Pepe, excellent. Alice, welcome. This is my display enclosure of Armadillidium gestroi. I see that Wally's here. Welcome, Wally. Supreme Gecko. Excellent. These isopods, as you can see, I just offered them some of your food. And I think I scared them when I was moving them over here a little bit. Otherwise, they'd be chowing down. One of them's already doing it, though. Kevin, hello. Greg Willman. William Elliott. Welcome. So, you may have seen my Instagram post. You may not have seen my Instagram post about this lovely species and how they're always out and about. You can see that even though they're in bright light, they're doing their thing. And so this enclosure, I'm not sure of the exact size. It's a fairly small one, so I don't recommend it as a permanent enclosure by any means for most isopods, except for, probably small ones. But it's about 9 inches long, maybe a little bit less than that, and about 6 inches wide. So a little smaller than a 6-quart, I guess. So not a good permanent home, but great for setting up a small group for display for a while as they, till they, outgrow the enclosure. And yes, that would be great if you hit the like button. The more people hit the like button, the more people see this stream, the more people join in. That's how it works. That's how the algorithm works. So I appreciate that. And, Hobby Strange Pets, I made a mistake. Last time I was going to talk to you about how many isopods can stay, what's the maximum number of isopods you can put in a 6-quart bin. I don't think I actually got there. So I apologize for that and want to make sure we talk about that. That was a Patreon question. So a couple of things. It totally depends on so many factors that it's hard to give you a good number. One is the type of isopod, because of course the size of the isopod and its tolerance for density, which are not, the same thing. There are some isopods that are territorial, some that really don't mind being packed in close together. Also the availability of food, what types of food you're feeding, how many hides and what style of hides. Like if you use something that has a lot of small compartments in it, you might do better than you would do if you didn't have, if you have a lot of small compartments, you can do better than if you didn't, for example, as far as the hide goes, and surface area and different things like that. So there's a lot of different directions. With something, a fairly small isopod, you can go up to 300, 400, 500 sometimes. With dwarf whites, I could say you could easily go to 1,000 in a 6-quart. But with something like, say, Porcelia expensis, I wouldn't recommend near that many, and I would only use a 6-quart tub as a fairly temporary enclosure for those at best, because they need a lot of space. So I'm hoping that kind of gives you your answer there. I think someone else asked a similar question, in fact, on Patreon. So maybe I just killed 2 birds with 1 stone with that. But it's a great question. It's just kind of hard to answer because it was Richard Font, Aqua Garden Zen, who asked, how many isopods are too big in a 6-quart container? When should I split the culture? I think you can split the culture. You kind of get a feeling for it when you look into the culture and you feel like there are isopods everywhere. They're finishing the leaf litter really quickly. They don't really have space to hide, that kind of stuff. So that's what I would say. So I hope that helps. And Reptilia Exotics, what is it about your gestroi that you think indicates they're not thriving? I'd like to know that. Maybe I can help you out. Pets Are My Life. Powder oranges are great. Oh, Christian. Oh, I can see how that would be awkward if the largest gestroi is a male and tries to mate with a smaller female. could be a problem. Oh yeah, mushrooms tend to be a hit with them. There's Ashley Nebel in the house. So is a half-gallon or 2-quart enclosure a good permanent enclosure for powdered orange isopods? It depends on how many you'll be moving out. That's not such a bad place, depending on the footprint of it, to keep a small culture as long as you're moving them out, because they're going to breed to a point where they're going to be overcrowded in there. But if you're going to take a certain number of them out to help maintain population every month or whatever, then you could do it. Other bioactive insect or inverts that aren't isopods or springtails are trying to make a native ecosystem terrarium. Well, some things that people, depending on if it's native, that gets a little trickier. I was just thinking of some items that aren't native. And I'm assuming kind of a humid one. Like, what about millipedes? You can do millipedes. So Candle 4444. I just looked at my zingers yesterday to see if there were any munci in there. I didn't see any, but that doesn't mean there aren't any in there, because Gestroy are really good at hiding that. I was going through my other Gestroy enclosure because I have 3. I have my zingers, I have this display enclosure, and then I have a 6-quart of Gestroy. And there are babies all over the 6-quart. I replaced part of the substrate and was fishing out Gestroy for quite a long time, the babies. So maybe I have Gestroy munci. I kind of doubt it because there were only a few adult-sized ones in there, but who knows? They just sit under the cork bark and they look dead. They're still alive. What's your ventilation like? What's your humidity like, Reptilia exotics? And I don't know of any Discord isopod chats. Does anybody? Alice was asking about it. Pothos safe in an isopod culture? Well, it depends on the species of isopods, depend on how healthy the pothos is. Pothos and isopods can certainly thrive in the same enclosure if the pothos needs are being met, but there are isopods that will eat live plants. Some of the Armadillidium are a little naughty about that. So William, does he sell isopods? Who sell isopods? Do I sell isopods? Because I do. Let's see. Oh yeah, pets are my life. Powder orange is one of the best for bioactives. I keep them with my leopard geckos. Well, the species. I have the party mix in there with them. Thank you, Wally, for putting the website there. Like the ventilation of P. scaber. Well, Gestroy do better with maybe a little bit more ventilation than scaber. They're not one of the most ventilation-hungry Armadillidium, but they do need some. They do appreciate a moisture gradient, of course, but they like a large moist area. You can see we're pushing 50% in this one for the moist area, or the hydration station. Ash M, welcome. I hope you got my email about your email. I replied to your email. Hope you got that. I'm interested in what you mentioned. Trissy, do you ever export to Europe? I do not. I don't have any of the documentation permit stuff for that with shipping to Europe, unfortunately. Okay, Tennis and Kingsley. Getting some roaches today from Kyle. I wonder if they work with them. Depends on the roaches. It also depends on how the roaches breed and where they like to hang out. If you have roaches that burrow a lot, it might be harder than some more arboreal roaches. Kyle mentions he keeps a lot of isopods with climbing roaches that are ovoviviparous, meaning they retain their egg cases or oothecae until they hatch, because then they're not vulnerable to isopods. If they are the kind that lay the oothecae and let them sit there, they're more vulnerable to isopods. So that's going to make a difference. Okay. And yes, Trissy, shipping out of the country and even to some states can be tricky. I mean, getting my permits to just ship within the United States was tricky. And I don't have permits for Florida yet. Still working on the Florida one. And there's no permit allowed for Hawaii. You can't ship any isopods there legally. So, yeah, I think I can ship to every other state, but some states still have restrictions. And all states have restrictions about which species you can ship. So there's Crystal, Pets and Plants. So hunter mixing isopods and millipedes. If the enclosure is a 40-gallon. To be honest, I think it has less to do with the size of the enclosure and more to do with some other factors. So Kyle has successfully mixed some species of millipedes with isopods, but there are cases where it doesn't work. There are cases where it does. It's kind of depends on the situation. I wanted to show you what's going on over here. Hopefully you can see it. Let's see. I'm looking at the wrong. There we are. This is, I'm not sure what's going on. I think what I found is that this is kind of sad. This pseudoscorpion that's just climbing away killed the pseudoscorpion that's right in the middle of the screen. Either that or it's scavenging on a dead body, which is gross. I'd never seen that before in my enclosure. But pseudoscorpions hanging out. But that one appears to have been killed. So I'm not excited about that. This is the first time I've seen that in here. You see lots of dead fruit flies because some of them die and some get killed. They serve as food for these little springtails, which in turn serve as food for the pseudoscorpions along with the fruit flies. So it's quite the ecosystem. You can see these springtails are doing really well in here. I have an observation about these pseudoscorpions, and that's I think they are doing sort of a soft brumation. I don't see as many of them lately. I think it's cooler. They're just kind of a little bit less active in the cooler weather, so I'm looking forward to them kind of more waking up, and I see more babies and all that kind of stuff. So that's going on. Let's see. And Trissy, yes, I showed those with Clint. It was the same pseudoscorpion cultures. I have currently 2 of them. I think, I don't remember which one I brought. I think maybe I brought the one I just showed you with me. John Loach, P. Werneri, I haven't had that one. So, haven't had the P. Werneri. So I can't really comment on that, although they're really cool. Okay, I'm going to show you something else. We've been looking long enough at the Gestroi, although I could look at them all day, truth be told, and it was nice that they were slowly gathering on the food dish as I was talking. Proof that they're pretty day active. I'm going to show you a larger display enclosure now. This one, try to get you some dimensions on this one in a second here. Just going to measure it real quick. And these are going to be approximate. We're looking about 16 inches long by 7 inches wide. About. This is also a Hobby Lobby enclosure, display enclosure for use with like car models and stuff. But I just drill them. You can see here, I drill the top, I drill the sides, put critters in them. This one is for my Porcellio hoffmannseggi black. And they are going crazy in here. This, of course, is not going to be a very large colony in here. I'm going to move them out. But you can see that they're thriving in this culture. And they do need their separate compartments, as you see. They do get territorial. The females can push each other around. They push the males around. The males push each other around. It gets kind of crazy. Here's a few more there. Let's see, what do we got? There's one that just molted right there. There's some more. They're under and around everywhere, constantly breeding for me in here. And like I said, I'm going to need to move them out of here, but they make a great display while their colony is small enough to do one. And there you go. Kevin, how the garter snakes doing? Great, still in brumation. Just checked on them a couple days ago. They are, I'm waiting for them to wake up. It's going to be pretty soon. I haven't decided. It's going to be within the next, well, definitely within the next month. But maybe within 2 weeks to a month is when I'm going to wake them up. So Screamin' Reels. You found a wild orange avulgata currently in my culture. What causes the orange, or is it a morph? There are orange morphs. What you probably have is a mutation because it's not fixed. But if you were to selectively breed over several generations, you might well get an orange morph from the descendants of the one that you have. But it's just a mutation at this point because genetically you haven't fixed it. But because it has 2 copies of the gene that allows it to be orange, any offspring it has will have 1 copy of the gene, and you cross those and you can get some. So Trissy B, the best type of isopod to keep with tarantulas. I'm actually going to be interviewing a tarantula keeper about that soon. I think it's a great question. And we need to be able to go over it more in detail than I can because I haven't kept tarantulas. And Vicabulus, I would say so. Egg crate is pretty much indispensable for the larger isopods because it provides those little modular territories. Does anyone know the Instagram of what? Of what, Alice? Ian Alicia, welcome. Any progress with the orange dream prognosis? Let's take a look. And sometimes they're called orange cream, sometimes they're called orange crumbles, but I'm going to show you. I've actually been keeping those in a similar enclosure. I kind of like these early on when the the cultures are small, because you can see what's going on without necessarily poking around in there. And that's what we're going to look at right now. Okay, Alice, my Instagram is just @Aquarimax Pets, all one word. So, yep, you can message me there for sure. Let's see. So, we were just looking at the Porcelia Hoffman's Egg Eye Black. Now we're going to look at my orange cream culture. It's very small and young and not isolated completely yet. But you can see some of the specimens here. That's a nice one right there in the middle of the screen. Check it out. Definitely orange with the pied trait. That one's definitely orange with the pied trait too, but it's just kind of more localized patterning. Let's see what else we've got here. See if I can show a few more of them. There's a lot more in here. It's just kind of tracking them down is sort of hit and miss. There's some more. You can see some of these are pure orange. Some of this generation is showing up as pure orange. A lot of the babies are. So I'm going to have to cull some of those out. But that's kind of normal. I may just leave them in there long enough for that generation to start producing more because some of those are going to be, they're all double het for the pied. The ones that are orange are probably all double het for pied. So it's going to be a little while before these are ready, completely isolated for sale. But they're reproducing and there's a good number of them in here. Let me see. Just going to mess around in the moss a little bit. You can see a good number of them in there that are actually pied. So, a ton of springtails in the moss. And I did create these myself. I crossed my powdered oranges with my orange Oreo crumbles and got blues. And then the blues, the next generation started producing some of these and I've been pulling them. Let me show you the culture I've been pulling them from. Because it's fun. It's honestly one of my favorite cultures to look at because it's so active and so colorful. This is my party mix. And that's what you get when you mix several morphs. And I've also pulled some others from this that are interesting and seen some really interesting ones in here that I haven't even started pulling yet. Here, let me move some things out of the way. Maybe I should give them a little feed and maybe they'll start going crazy because they generally tend to do that. I'm going to grab some Supreme Gecko Chow. Supreme Isopod Chow. Sorry. Sometimes I accidentally say Supreme Gecko Chow because it's made by Supreme Gecko, but it's not Gecko Chow, it's Isopod Chow. Apologize for the inaccuracy there, but Wally of Supreme Gecko and Nanette of Supreme Gecko make it, so you can maybe excuse my error a little bit. And these are kind of fantastic containers. I really like them. I get these at Hobby Lobby and I drill them, and that's all. Let's see. Keep some small tropical species of my tarantula, Tricorina tomentosa. So Trissy, from what I understand, my limited understanding of tarantulas, that seems to be a pretty normal species to keep with tarantulas. So can you give them fruit to eat and that's it to satisfy them? I wouldn't rely entirely just on fruit. I think it's important to give them some other things. Of course, you should make sure they get plenty of leaf litter and some decaying wood, hopefully, as well, as kind of their main source of food that they always have to nibble on. And then if you gave them just that and fruit, you'd probably be okay. Just the decaying leaves a constant supply of those in some fruit, they'd be okay, but not optimal. But if you give them some protein sources and some additional calcium sources, they'll probably do a lot better. So, yeah, so Tennyson, yeah. This is a good species to play with because they're so prolific. You can work with them pretty fast. There are hundreds in here. You can't see a lot of them now because I just scared the heck out of them by making a move. But in the next couple of minutes, they're going to gather there. But you can still get an idea that there's a lot of color going on here. And there's whiteouts, there's blues, there's oranges, there's orange creams. There are pieds, which don't seem to be the same as Oreo crumbles. There are Oreo crumbles, there are caramels, and some leucistics have even come out of here, which is funky. So I want to show you my leucistics. Theropod Hunter, welcome. What are the best isopods to survive shipping? Well, not dwarf whites. Nothing tropical. Some things that seem to survive really well, Porcelio scaber, Porcelio laevis, really survive shipping really well. There are plenty of others that do as well, but those are two that just come to me right away. Most of the Armadillidium do pretty well too. Let's see. How many varieties are recommended to start selling isopods? Thanks for the stream. You're welcome, Brett. And I would say you can start out with any number as long as you have a ready market. It's more about having a ready market. And so if you have a variety that has a good market for it, some species like dairy cows, a little bit harder to unload than some others. But if you have, say, something like rubber duckies, you're going to find somebody who wants to buy it. You could start with one. But if you have a wide variety, if you have 15, 20, 30, something like that, then you're going to be pretty comfortable. So Reptilia Exotics, have you ever kept tiger salamanders? Yes, I have. I'm going to get a couple later this year. Awesome. They're pretty easy, and they're fun. They're really amazing feeding response on those guys. An amazing feeding response on tiger salamanders. So very fun. They don't necessarily even need to eat live food. It's good for them. I would recommend some, but they'll eat almost anything. And Supreme Gecko, I think that's true. You can get, if you get them from a reputable breeder who packs them well and so on, that's going to really help with survival. And in the unlikely event that you have issues with survival, they're going to take care of you. This last week, not this week, but this last week, I had a pretty good, I shipped out a lot, had really good success, but we had a couple of issues, and I'm going to take care of those people. So, are water isopods and terrestrial ones different? Can regular isopods swim and breathe underwater like the pond ones? They are different. There are isopods that can survive, terrestrial isopods that can survive extended periods underwater. There are terrestrial isopods that will drown pretty quickly. Most of them can survive longer than you might expect underwater, maybe an hour or two. Some can survive weeks underwater. Some, well, the aquatic ones can, of course, survive indefinitely, and they have more adapted I guess you'd say gills to living underwater. And let's see. Yeah, some of them are already munching on the Supreme Isopod Chow over there. Just to let you know, there's a little teaser. At the end of the video that's coming out on Friday, if all goes well, there's a little time lapse of these guys feeding, and it's pretty fun to watch. It's this same bin, but you get to see it in time lapse, and it's cool. So stay till the end, and you'll get to see that. And let's see. Do I have experience with the Hawaiian Millipedes Spiroboleus species Maui? I don't. I've been curious about that species, but I don't have any. What are your thoughts on cohabitation with different isopods? I have not done it successfully with very many. I am experimenting a little bit with some of the, apparently, dairy cows may well be a different species from California mix, and I've got some of those together with the oranges, experimenting with that. I also have a little bin I'll show you in a minute with some cohabitation, but it can be done in certain situations. It's not always a good idea. Never do it with dwarf whites, pretty much. And yes, and make sure that when you think of reputable isopod breeders, you should definitely think of Wally at Supreme Gecko. No question about that. So, and at the Supreme Gecko website, there is an isopod breeder list. And Supreme Gecko just mentioned it there. 100 up to 125 breeders. And Wally, I have no problem if you would like to post a link to that. This would be perfectly appropriate. I would feel happy if you want to do that. So critter keepers can work. Just make sure that your critters don't dry out, because they can. Wally for president. It's awesome. Yep, and Wally's Food for Isopods, I don't know if I know of a better one. I can't think of a better one. It's awesome stuff. Fantastic. So, what would you say if I were to... Where'd I put my lid now? Put my lid down somewhere to the isopods that are currently being viewed, and I just need to find it so that I can show you what I want to show you now. Well, frustration. Where's my lid? Where'd I put it? I apologize, everyone. Just... Oh, I found it. Put it right over here. See, these are a lot more impressive when they're all out. And there are so many in here, but they are gorgeous. Love this species. There's a little orange cream right there running around. I don't know if you can see it. I probably ought to cull that one, pull it, and put it with my other orange creams. Trying to get as many as I can in there. Put like 16 or 20 in there probably. But it would be good to have more. Okay, so as I put these over here, I'm going to show you, these have what appear to be some leucistics that I pulled from that party mix, which is fantastic. Some of them might just be low expression Oreo crumbles, but I think some of them are actually really leucistics. Check these out. That one is definitely not leucistic. That one is orange-ish, but there's a couple in here that are not. So I'm going to pull these right now, put them in my party mix very carefully. You have to be careful with the powders. They're very sensitive. Easily crushed, but with many years experience, I'm usually pretty good about picking them up without harming them. There, got those moved. Oh, nope, I dropped one right back in. And got it back up here. Going to put it in. There we go. Okay, let's take a look at that. This one has black eyes. Can you see those black eyes right there? So it's not a whiteout, but it's very white. So leucistic means that, as opposed to albino, they do produce dark pigment, but they have a hard time distributing it. So it often ends up in just the eyes. So in some animals, like ball pythons, they have a blue-eyed leucistic and a black-eyed leucistic. Alligators have blue-eyed leucistics that are very rare, but basically the pigment is not distributed well, and so it ends up in the eyes and very few other places, sometimes some tiny little spots in other parts of the body. Like the zoo that I used to work at had a leucistic alligator with blue eyes, mostly white body, and a few dark spots on its snout and so on, a little bit other spots on its body. But I have several of these with the dark eyes, which are super fantastic. Love them. So I'm going to try to isolate those. Hey, the honey badger, welcome. So Dan the Turtle Man, these containers are Hobby Lobby, like model cars or dolls or whatever containers that I just drill myself. And they work great for isopods, for small containers. So, and Del Normile, I should be able to selectively breed the leucistic variants. I think so. That is definitely my intention. I think it'll work. It's just going to take a few generations to play with it and make sure they're fully isolated, but I think I can do it. Ah, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Morelia, welcome. Glad to have you here, as always. And Dope Critters, thank you for the super chat. My lady won't let me use the oven to bake leaves. I bought a single plug-in burner to boil them in a pot. How long do you suggest I boil them? You can probably honestly just bring them to a boil and let them cool. Probably good enough. Very white isopod with clearer eyes pop in our orange Dalmatian culture. You may have a whiteout there. And dope critters, hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have other questions about that. But yeah, if you just bring the leaves to a boil and then let them cool, you probably cool. You killed whatever you're going to kill. Your dairy cows just had wild type babies. Carrot cube, that's truly bizarre. And I'm wondering what's going on. If in fact your isopods have been infiltrated by a different species, that is possible. Because I never heard of that happening. I've heard of the infiltration happening. I've never heard of dairy cows producing wild types. So, feeding dish. The feeding dish in this right now, I'm having a video is going to come out of there, but there's someone called Strudy's on Etsy, 3D prints these feeding dishes. I'm going to do a whole video all on feeding dishes coming up, so keep an eye out for that. Tennyson, do you have Punta Cana and Santa Lucia? Or Santa Lucia, because it's not Italian, it's Spanish. If so, which do you prefer? I like the patterns from Punta Cana, but the colors in Santa Lucia are very variable. Well, let's take a look at both of those, shall we? I have to say that my Santa Lucia is a very new colony, well, fairly new colony, not extremely new. I got the first ones in October, I think. Let me check what my date says on there. And I just moved them to a new enclosure, so disclaimer, you're not going to see a ton of Santa Lucias. There's a load of babies in there, but I got them in October, and then, yeah, the beginning of October I got my first start on the culture, and then at the end of October I got more. So bugeaters.co is where I got my first ones at the expo, local expo here. And then I got David Ferelli and his daughter Sparrow sent me some more. Let's see, there's some. Look at that. So you can see even this small selection, you've got white, you've got one that looks kind of Punta Cana-esque on the bottom right. You've got an orange one, you've got a couple of wild types with some other markings. There's a lot of variety. I think there's more range of variety in these Punta Cana. I mean in these Santa Lucia than in the general Punta Cana. But like I said, this colony is really young. So you can't really do it justice by looking at a colony this young. They're doing okay, and like I said, there's a load of babies in there, but you can't really see it. So let me show you some other Punta Cana. Okay, right here I'm going to show you some Punta Cana from, this is from Medieval Serpents. He sent me some high contrast Punta Cana, and they're a little bit, I've had this colony since, let's see, July, and they've started to produce a lot of babies, so let's see what we can see. We still get a decent amount of variety, but not as much variety so far in this sample at least. But I think there's more variety in this high contrast Punta Cana by a long shot than there is in most Punta Cana. You can see, you know, some more. There's a lot in here, but just the luck of the draw, you know, whether you're going to see them or not. See a lot of them. Don't see a lot on the wood there right now. Focusing is being challenging right now. Let's see if we got anybody down here. Oh, that helps. See, that's a decent amount of variety right there, because these are the high contrast Punta Cana. They've been selectively bred for high contrast over a long period of time. He says he's been working with these for a few years, which is why I was so excited to get a hold of some of his high contrast Punta Cana. And then let me show you my other big bin of Punta Cana here, if I can get to it. It's kind of under this table here that I'm using right now, so that's less than ideal, but I think we can make this work. Ooh, running out of space. And I just knocked over my pseudoscorpions. It's okay, it's not going to hurt them. They didn't go very far, so they'll be all right. While I show you, this is my mature Punta Cana colony, and there are lots and lots of isopods in here. Beautiful, the Punta Canas, but these Punta Canas maybe have, they're like all variations on a similar theme, I guess you could say. To some extent, they tend to be sort of have coppery metallic-y sort of colors. There's a few oranges in there. There's a lot of them that have the dark heads. And they're really gorgeous, but maybe just not quite as much variety, but still beautiful. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Morelia. Might have to rewatch some of the past live streams with a notebook. Always good content. Definitely worth noting some of the best info lists, etc. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I really, really appreciate the super chat as well. And Vocabulous, yeah, you're right in the chat. Yeah, I really love them. I think they're fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing as they breed a little bit more. And yes, and thank you, Lacey. The feeding trays are working out great, and that video is coming up. The first one is actually this weekend. So this Friday, you'll be getting a shout out and then I'm going to do the other video that's all about feeding trays. This other one is the one from the CTW. So a little bit of a spoiler there. So Bug Eaters actually doesn't sell a lot of feeders. The name may sound a little bit like that, but Bug Eaters is mostly, they do a lot of dart frogs, so creatures that eat bugs, and I guess that's why. They do sell some roaches and isopods and so on. A lot of it's dart frogs and dart frog related plants. Just happens to be the name, I guess. Oh, Christian. That's awesome. Congratulations on the first duckies. First ducky monkai. Great news. Okay. So I realized we're a little bit we're a little bit behind in that I was supposed to answer some more Patreon questions and I haven't yet. So here's a Patreon question as we look at these lovely Punta Cana from Kevin Zay. He says, which isopod species is poised to be the next big thing when it comes to popularity? I think it's one of the Marulanellas. They have been gaining a lot of popularity lately. They're super brightly colored. They seem to be, and they have some fantastic contrast in their patterns. They seem to be day active, and they don't seem to be terribly difficult to keep. I don't have any. Is my mic dying? Because I've got my mic strapped right to me, but if the batteries are running low, I may need to switch out for my other mic. Just let me know how that's going. Okay, hold on just a second. Okay, everybody, we're doing a switch with the audio. Sorry, bear with me. I think my batteries were just running low on my mic. And here we go. How's this? Is my audio any better? Please let me know. How is the audio? Testing, testing. Any audio? Different. Okay. Audio's better. Unfortunately, I'm going to be a little less mobile now because I just had to plug in my headphones because my wireless mic that allows me to travel around the room just ran out of batteries. So, too bad. Because I like that mic, but when it runs out of batteries, it's crummy. So, I apologize for that. It seemed like at the beginning it was working fine, but now that I'll just use this mic for the moment then. We'll just go with that. Okay, so let's take a look at another chat, and I think I'll switch out some isopods in a minute here. But that's my vote, Kevin. I think the Marulanella, I'm not sure which species, but one of the Marulanellas is going to be the one that takes it. C on Patreon says, how much have you been seeing your new Porcellio expansus autumnal equinox? Are they fairly surface active or not? Let me see. I have seen a decent amount of them. I don't think they're ever going to be, that species is ever going to be the most active, but let me just pop over there and grab them for a second, okay? Switch out the Punta Canas here. And put on the mic. Okay. I really apologize that I lost some mobility when my mic ran out of batteries. I think I'm going to get rechargeable batteries for that mic. That's what I need to do. So, let's see what we can find here with the autumnal equinox. I have seen them out and about eating. The Supreme Isopod chow in there. Having some trouble finding any right now at the moment. Oh, look, there's a whole bunch gathered right there. But as you see, they're not out and about by themselves. I had to dig them up to find them. So there's a group of them. There are at least 11 here. That is a beautiful male. Just check that out. These are gorgeous, aren't they? Let's see. My mealworm breeding has been going really well. Dope critters. Do you know if there's any reason why Philoscia muscorum isn't really seen in the hobby? I think people are having a hard time breeding it, honestly. I don't think it's the easiest isopod out there to breed. I think that's why, part of the reason at least. People are doing it. There are people who breed them, but they don't breed nearly as readily as some of the others. So Wally asks, what's the next isopod that I plan on crossing off my wish list? Let's see. Do we need to start a second mic fund? Well, I definitely need to get some batteries at least. Let's take a look under this cork bark. There's often some under the cork bark. Oh, there's a load of them under the cork bark. I don't see any babies yet, but I don't really expect to see babies this early. But yeah, they're not particularly surface active, but they're so gorgeous. Let's see. Next isopod off my wish list. Well, I don't have Porcellio hazai yet, and I would love some Porcellio hazai high yellow or Porcellio hazai giant, one of those. I don't have those yet. I can't really ship them myself. I don't have a permit to ship those, but I would love to have some. That's one of them, because they're gorgeous. And these are expansus. This colony was started, I have the date on it, just hold on a second. This was January 18th. This came from Smugbug, one of my more recent videos, actually. Very recent culture. Although I was maturing the substrate for longer than that, but I put these isopods in January 18th. The substrate had been maturing, at least a good amount of the substrate that's in there had been maturing for about a month. I try to do that when I can. It really helps the culture. So what I mean by maturing is you have springtails and things like that going on in it. So 1 second. Just had to put the box away, and I'm back. And Vocabulus. So from what I know of Vocabulus, the permits don't care whether it's trading or selling or what. What they do care is whether you're going across state lines. So it doesn't matter if they're free or whatever. If they're going across state lines, that's when they're concerned about it. They do not care whether or not money is exchanging hands. Here, who can be the first one to tell me which ones these are? Let's just see if it happens. I do, Tennyson, have a Scaber lottery mix. Yep, Random T's got it. Yep, these are Japanese magic potions. Oh, they look a little bit dry there on the moss. These are definitely the Japanese magic potions. So let's take a look what we can find here. Look, there's loads of them under here. Look at all those Japanese magic potions. One of the ways you can tell the difference between Japanese magic potions and the American line, Japanese tend to max out at a smaller size, in my experience at least. They often have more, they have fewer yellow markings that aren't as big. The American line magic potions have been line bred for really crazy yellow markings, and the Japanese not so much. They're both gorgeous though. They're like little opals. And they're everywhere in this enclosure. It's been going nuts, which I love. This colony is about, I want to say about a year old, a little bit more than a year old, and they're just everywhere. And the orangey color may come from, partly from the carotenoids they're getting in their food, if you can see some of that. It could be what's going on, I'm not sure. Yeah, once they get going, they're really going crazy. So I'm not sure if these were collected in Japan initially or proved out in Japan. No idea on that. That's a good question. Woo! I just probably dumped a ton of them out. But they're doing really well in here, as you can see. Really like them. We've got one from Bear the Mighty, a super chat. Thank you, Bear the Mighty. Says, when people talk about microbes good for isopods, which ones are they talking about specifically? Are there inoculants you can buy for these microbes? Well, I think there's a lot of research that can be done in that area. But basically, if you have springtails going long enough in a culture, for example, the microbes are eventually going to be in there. So if you can get springtails started in a culture early enough before you put the isopods in, and once the springtails are thriving, that's a good indication that there's some fungal activity in there, there's some microbial activity in terms of bacteria and whatnot, and you're probably going to have some that are going to do well for you. I think Frank de Tank has a good point that BioDude has BioShot, which includes some of those mycorrhizae, which are beneficial fungi that can grow in vivariums, stuff like that, to help get things started. I'm experimenting with some things I can't really talk about yet because it's too early to say, but I'm getting some good results with some inoculation protocols, let's say. If you start out with a substrate that already has live critters in it, like Permian Exotics black substrate formulation, which is for isopods and millipedes, it already has some of those goodies in it in terms of microbial life, as well as really nutritious ingredients like flake soil. So that's a good way to go as well. In fact, I want to show you one of the enclosures that has some of the Permian Exotics substrate in it. So a long time ago, a really, really long time ago, I got a couple of Spirostreptus species 1 millipedes from Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace. And unfortunately, the first one I got died pretty early, but the second one, I got two at the same time. A pair, male and female. Female died really soon for whatever reason, just random. But the male lasted for years and years. And I really wanted to see if I could get some babies from that male. So Mickey M sent me some tiny little baby Spirostreptus species 1. They're wee little things, maybe an inch and a half long, something like that. And I was really excited to see if I could get them to grow up in time to breed with the ones that Peter sent me. And unfortunately, they didn't mature in time. But they are now reaching the size at which they should be breeding. These are Spirostreptus species 1. These are all the ones from Mickey M. Because my male, despite living many years, didn't quite make it these didn't make it to maturity early enough to be able to mate with him. But anyway, we've got them. And Del Normile, these are, the springtails that I have are we going to get any spoilers here? These springtails, I have various springtails, but the species you're looking at here, this is Sanella curviceta. I do sell these if you're interested. They're my favorite springtails to keep with isopods. You can get them other places too, and they go by a lot of different common names. That's why I use the scientific name, because I think it's just makes more sense. They are fabulous. They're adaptable to any level of humidity. They'll keep with isopods. They'll dry out if it's too dry, but so will isopods. So any setup that's suitable for isopods of any humidity and ventilation level, these springtails will do fine in there. So they're fantastic. Yeah, so Bear the Mighty, I need to do some more research on that. I wish I knew more about it. I don't know a ton about all the different microbial species that do well with isopods. So pets in my life, good question about the party mixes. I think some people feel like party mixes are you're like diluting things. I don't know. I like them. I just don't think you should just take things out of a party mix and say it's something else when it's not, because you don't know what kind of genes it has. If you pull a powder blue from my party mix, for example, and say, these are powder blues, and they're going to true breed powder blues for you, that's misleading information. You don't know that that's going to be the case, and it may not be. So I think that is a bad thing, but I think the party mixes, as long as you recognize them for what they are, and you don't try to pass them off for something they're not, I don't have any problem with myself. So Pepe Rando, people have asked me about the Isopod Tour. I want to get there. I do. I wanted to do that for my 50,000 subscribers, and I still do. And I want to do that as my celebration for that. Now I'm at 51 something, and I still haven't done it. The thing is, it just takes a lot of time. I want to do it. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it and not take too long to do it. But if I'm planning on it. I definitely want to go there. So Corey N, best size container for breeding a new small colony. Depends on the species, depends on the size of the colony. 6-quart is kind of a go-to for a lot of people, and it works pretty well. It will take a little longer in some cases with a container that big for the isopods to get into breeding mode. They're going to go into growing mode for a little while, depending on the size of the culture. If you start out with 30 isopods of most species, I'd say go with the 6-quart for sure. If you start out with 10, you might want to start with something a little smaller, maybe half the size. Big enough so that you can maintain a moisture gradient in there. As long as it's big enough to maintain a moisture gradient, you can go pretty small with if you're starting with 10 or 12 of them. And Aiden Ford Sword, I don't have any Cubaris marina little c yet. Plan on getting some eventually. So let's see, I answered Kevin's question, C's question. Let's go to Elizabeth's question. It says, do you think isopod frass is safe and effective as an indoor plant fertilizer similar to worm castings? I do. I think it's going to be very similar in many ways to worm castings, and you can use that on live plants. Just with you got to be careful you're not, dumping isopods out that are likely going to die if they end up in there. So make sure you get through that, go through it carefully. But yeah, I think you could do that. Let's see, I answered Richard Font's question. Hal Carlton, are there any important considerations to keep in mind when using blue death feigning beetles as cleanup crew for a reptile? There are a few. I think the most important one, honestly, is some reptiles will try to eat blue death feigning beetles. They are heavily armored, but there are isopods, there are reptiles out there that have strong enough jaws and teeth and a strong enough feeding response that they might kill or at least damage a blue death feigning beetle. So that is the main consideration. There are reptiles that will do well with them, and you can't always say, well, blue death feigning beetles have done fine in this enclosure with this leopard gecko. For 2 years, my leopard gecko has never tried to eat them. I think I'm going to be fine. I'm going to put them with another leopard gecko. That's not a guarantee that it's going to work. Because I was talking to, her first name is escaping me right now. She does reptiphiles. I was talking to her at a reptile expo not long ago. And she was saying, I was talking about how I keep superworm beetles with my leopard gecko, and she never eats them, and it works great. And she said, yeah, that's wonderful. And I have geckos that will gleefully just munch those beetles down without any hesitation. So that is probably the biggest consideration. I hope that helps. It's a great question. Let's see. And let's see, Del Normile. Sí, yo hablo español un poquito, entiendo muy bien el español, pero hace mucho tiempo que no practico, pero hablo italiano mejor. So, yeah, basically, I do speak some Spanish, but it's been a long time that I haven't spoken it, but I speak Italian a lot better than I speak Spanish. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Going through, trying to make sure I catch all of these. There's a lot of them. Ashley Nebo, the more I've involved in the isopod community, I realize there are armadillidium people and porcellio people. I'd say I'm more armadillidium. What do you think you are? And what are the primary care differences? Well, that's a great question. I think, let's see. Let's see. That's a hard question to answer because I think I'm not an armadillidium or a porcellio person. I'm both because I have lots of armadillidium, I have lots of porcellio, I have lots of other. But I agree with you. There are a lot of people who favor one or the other, and I don't. I would say that it's more about species because you have the large, you have the large porcellio, Spanish and other Mediterranean porcellio that have care very similar to many of the armadillidium. Like you can keep Porcellio expansus and Armadillidium klugi basically the same, right? But then Armadillidium gestroi is more similar to maybe Porcellio laevis. So it depends more on the species. And I'd say I'm just evenly divided. I love them both. And I can't pick my favorite isopod, right? It's too hard. So the primary carry differences boil down to species. That's where I go with that. And Javi Strange Pet says, how much do you think the hobby will grow in the next 5 years? I hope a lot. I hope a lot. I'm think I'm going to, we're all going to see an increase in the isopod hobby. It's not going anywhere. We're still finding new species. We're still learning husbandry for them. We're still distributing them out into the hobby. People are developing new morphs all the time. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to grow. I just don't know how fast. It kind of depends on what we're finding. So what large darkling beetles are we able to breed easily in captivity? Well, other than Zoophobus morio, which is super easy, that might be the easiest one. But yeah, someone mentioned in the chat Eleodes armata. That's a pretty good one. Check out Invertebrate Dude on Instagram. He's breeding a ton of darkling beetles of all different types. Also check out Logan Loves Bugs. Logan Loves Bugs. She's breeding. She just produced a couple of different species. I'm losing track of what I'm talking about, but she's doing some good work there too. So Bear the Mighty, I did do a super chat from you, and I did answer it. I just I want to make sure you get it. So if you need to restate it, and you don't have to super chat it obviously again. Oh, the microbes that are good for isopods. Yeah, that's a question I don't know a ton about. Although I would say that if you get a substrate like Permian exotics, flake soil based substrate, you're going to get them. I just don't know a lot about the individual microbes themselves. So hopefully that helps. Corvus Music, hello. So Ashley likes any isopod that can conglobate or roll into a ball the best. I do like Eleodes armata. I have several of them. They're pretty cool. And Orchidelia. I think that substrate, if it's not too old, but it does have some superworm activity in it, could be good for isopods and springtails, yes. If it's like really spent, it might not be as good. You might have lost some of the value in it. You see what I'm saying? But if you can definitely get some, if you have some activity from the superworms in there, it can be beneficial. And let's see, James Greason had a question about green sand, a hermit crab food used for isopods, but I had never used it. I don't know much about it. I haven't really heard about it except for here. So, Hobby Strange Pets, how many individual isopods do you have? I do not know. I have about 100 bins of isopods. Some of the bins, are fairly new bins, like some of the ones I showed you today, and they only have a couple dozen isopods maybe in them. Others have thousands. So, hard to say. I definitely have thousands of isopods, but I don't know how many thousands. I probably have well over 1,000 in my bigger zebra bin. That's probably conservative to say I have well over 1,000 in there. I don't know. So, what do I got over here? Okay, I was thinking, can I show you the 1,000 isopod bin? I don't know. I'm going to throw a guess out there. I don't know how good it is, but I'm going to say, I don't know, 10,000 isopods maybe? I don't know. No idea, really. So you converted the 20-gallon and 36 aquascapes, 20-gallon and 36-gallon aquascapes into isopod terrariums, and they're so much more manageable and still quite attractive. See, there you go. I think that's part of the reason I do that too. I have aquariums. I love aquariums, but they are easier. Mr. and Mrs. Morelia, we've got a super chat. By the way, the mealworm farm is good. Had a multi-tray design going before asking you about your more simple one bin design. Have 2 sets of babies so far. Awesome. Yes, glad to hear that. I have thought about trying the multi-tray bins, but I thought, you know what? This other one is so much easier. Why should I? Kind of. And I guess you see what I mean. It is easier. I just wanted to take a look at the yellow zebras. There aren't very many in here yet. But here is a yellow zebra. Most of these came from Pet Peds and Pods. That's one of the individuals that came from Rachel at Pet Peds and Pods, my yellow zebras. But then I found some in my normal bin, which is kind of fun. And they need a little water, honestly. Let me give them a little bit of water, just a second. There. Just a little water there. I can't actually fit the big zebra bin on this table right now with all the stuff that's on it. In an upcoming video, and show the big zebra bin. So, green banana roaches in my compost pile in South Florida. Do people raise these or use these as feeders? If you're thinking of the species that I'm thinking of, yeah, they do raise those. I remember that species from Hawaii, and it's the scientific genus name like Naufueta or something like that. If so, that's, yeah, people do breed those. They do fly, they do climb really well, but other than that, they make pretty good feeders from what I understand. Is it Panchlora? Is that the one you're talking about? Okay. I get them confused since I can't keep roaches. My roach taxonomy is kind of crummy, just to be honest, but I try. Look at this. Here's the guys being pretty active on that food dish there, the party mix of the Porcelionides pruinosus. Cool. Well, hopefully I didn't miss anything. It's about time to cut out because I don't want to infringe upon other people's live streams. But I've enjoyed this one. I want to thank everyone for the super chats. Mr. and Mrs. Morelia super chatted to us. Dope Critters. Let's see, was it Bear? Oh, I can't go back and see them all anymore. It won't let me, but Bear the Mighty, and I think there were some other super chats in there too. And I really appreciate that. They help keep appreciated. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you being here, and be sure to check out my video coming out on Friday. And everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and keep watching. I really appreciate your support, and I have a lot of fun doing these live streams and my other videos. So appreciate it all. Take care.